Welcome to Liberate TV, brought to you by LiberateMe.com and 90 Seconds TV. I'm Laura Humphreys. Raising finance can be a complicated and quite scary prospect for many small business owners, and yet sometimes you really do need to raise money, to raise capital in order to grow your business. So today I'm going to talk to Melissa Clark-Reynolds about a concept of raising finance and how you should go about it. Melissa has had a lot of experience in this area, so welcome Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you've seen investment from both sides of the fence. You've raised money for your own businesses. I know in your recent venture you've raised up over $2 million. And you've also been an angel investor and involved in helping businesses get finance from investors. So from your perspective, what are the key things a business owner should be thinking about if they're considering raising finance?
I think the number one is to make sure that they're really building an asset. A lot of people want to raise money in order to keep their business going, and that's not really very inspiring for anyone. So the first one to me is to be sure that you're building something that's worth building. Build an asset. The next one is to think about where that money should come from. And for most people, when you think about how to make a business work, the first step really should be to try and earn it. And that sounds very simple, but what I mean by that is that if you have revenue, if you sell products, and you're doing that well, and you keep the costs in the business down, you should be making money that you can reinvest in the business.
So it's continuing to reinvest your own profits back into the business?
I think so, and I will always take less than I need, in a way, out of the business to keep the pressure on. Even in the current one I'm in, I take $30,000 a year out of a business as a CEO, and okay, my needs are not that great compared to a lot of people these days. I want some commitment from the business because I'm putting my time in, but I also don't want to overload the business with costs just to keep my lifestyle running. So earn the money is the first one. In New Zealand, we all use our houses as banks. And regardless of whether you think that's a good or a bad thing, I have to say that my property investment strategy has been really to give me a bank whenever I needed it in order to invest in my businesses. And sometimes that's been better or worse, but I haven't done it because I know anything about property. I've done it because I want an asset I can borrow against at times.
Yeah. And that is one of the scary ones for, that putting your home at risk is a scary concept for many.
It is, but it's only a house. I started my first serious business. I sold my house in order to fund it because I couldn't borrow against my house because the economy was so bad at the time. It was straight after the '87 crash. It was a complete nightmare, and so I sold the house, took the capital from the house, and I figured that I would make money in the business at some point and buy another house, which I did. So mortgage against the house. And then the next thing I think is to borrow from the bank, which is kind of a bit like the mortgage one, but sometimes you need a personal loan, or you need to see if there's some other way you can borrow from family or friends. There are pitfalls of doing it, but there are also upsides of doing it. And I think the final one really is to look at raising capital through the sale of shares. So that's raising angel capital, so selling shares in your business to someone. And there's not a large venture capital market in New Zealand, but there is globally, and so I've been looking at raising money in Silicon Valley at the moment, and there is always money out there for good businesses.
Okay, so you've pretty much in your various ventures, you've pretty much covered all of those options in various forms, haven't you? Yeah.
I have done all of them, and I have a other side, it's kind of like do them all and then rinse and repeat, and so, while you're doing them, you want to be doing all of them, right? So the cheapest money you can get in New Zealand is the mortgage money, but you've got to service that. The only way to service that is by creating a good business that makes money that you can service the mortgage. So, they're all the same. You want to be doing every single step.
At the end of the day, you've got to be creating a good business that can really start to generate some money.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone said, the last one you talked about was venture capital, and again, I think for the small business market, even just the word venture capital is quite scary. So this whole thing about raising finance, is getting some confidence in this area. How would you go about raising venture capital? What's the right and wrong ways to get someone to invest in you?
Well, I think there are two things that are really important. So one is your preparation, and the other one is your relationships. So the preparation is making sure that you have a really articulated business plan, not something in your head, not something on a napkin. It might start out as a PowerPoint slide, and I have to say that's where mine started in this current business. So I think I had 8 slides when I first started wandering around talking to people about the business. So have a very clear picture of how the business is going to work, how it's going to make money, who you need on your dream team, and what the exit plan is. Who's going to buy this business when you're done? And
I think that might be the ingredient that's often missed.
forgotten, because people are often just trying to build themselves a lifestyle or a job, and they're not thinking, for the venture capitalists, what's in it for them is that they get their payoff at exit. So you've got to be clear that the exit is within sight. Usually you talk about 3 to 5 years. In the current economy, we're talking 7 to 9, because it's really not a strong acquisition market out there for most businesses. But you need to know who's going to want to own this business. And it's a bit like any other sale. Whose problem does your business solve? So, for the Trade Me guys, for example, they solved a problem for a publisher. And so that's why they got bought. And so for us, we look at our business and it might be solving a problem for someone in the entertainment industry or an internet publisher again. So it's thinking clearly about that. And then the relationship side is, look, people love to give advice, they just love it. So before I ask anyone for money, I spend a year asking them for advice. And then they're invested in my business by the time I go to actually say, hey, do you want to come along?
How do you go about that? How do you go about that sort of?
Well, ask them if they have a look at the business plan and tell you what they think. That's a really good place to start. And then once that's done, maybe ask them, who do you think might be interested in investing in this? And could you introduce me? And why do you think they might be interested? And really ask a lot of questions and be respectful about wanting to know the answer. Take the advice.
Okay. Now, one thing you said to me when we talked about this earlier was that when you're looking to invest in a business, you're looking to invest in an asset.
Yeah.
So what defines an asset as a business owner, and what is an asset, and what would you invest in?
So the kinds of things that I think are assets are companies that can run without the owner.
Yep.
So, often, like even I accept in my own business right now, we're at startup stage, if I wasn't there, it would be really hard for this business to run.
But that's typical at startup stage,
It's typical at startup.
You have to be there at the beginning.
But what happens is most founders don't plan for their exit. So to build a really good asset, you need to plan for the owner to exit. Even if they don't, you need to pack a team around them that could run the company. You want a company that, like we joke, part of why we have monkeys, you want a business that any monkey could run, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So you want a turnkey business at some point that you don't have to have specific brainy skills to run or specific qualifications to run, because that makes it worth a whole lot more in the future, because anyone can buy it.
Yep.
So really thinking about, like a power station is an asset, right? You put a whole lot of money into it, you turn it on, you maintain it, and it runs. And so I'm constantly thinking, how can I build something like that? A wind power, a hydro station. What would a business look like that ran like that?
Yep.
Rather than, like, if you're selling time, you're toast.
Yep.
There's no point.
No one wants to buy a business that's reliant on its owner.
No.
No one.
It's just so.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a business not dependent on you.
Yep.
What else? We talked about you've got to have a customer base.
You've got to have a really strong customer base. And for us in our business, really our customer base is probably our biggest asset. Yep. So we're very clear about defining it. One of the other things I see often is that people are afraid when they do start up, they have to pick a really big market to go after. All of the research is that the smaller the market and the more defined it is, the easier it is to win. And so pick a really defined market. That also gives you a better asset when you go to sell the market. So for us, it's boys 8 to 12. It's very specific. That makes it much easier to package that up as an asset to sell to someone in the future.
Yep. And the other thing we talked about was brand.
Your brand,
I think that's underestimated.
People do underestimate their brand, or they spend too much money thinking branding is the logo. And not thinking about what's the personality of your brand, how does it work, what does it mean for your customers, what does it mean for your clients, what does it mean for your staff, and really living the brand. Because a brand that is like in integrity with itself, for us our brand is not just a little logo of a monkey, which is part of it, it's also our values base, which is about generosity, sustainability, fun. And if we don't community, if those 4 things aren't lived in the business, the brand is something that's just tacked on the end. So a really good brand resonates emotionally with people. It's not just about a logo.
And it's something that can be invested in.
Yeah.
Right, well that's fantastic. You've
You're so
really
welcome.
given us some very helpful advice on raising finance for business. If you want to check out minimonos.com, which is Melissa's current venture, that's minimonos.com. And if you want to learn more about building a business that someone wants to buy, visit liberateme.com. See you next time. Thank you.
Bye.